I'm Kenton Claremont, and you're listening to the Train to Hunt podcast. Dude, there he is. He's coming in. Come in. Get ready.
What's up, man?
You hear me?
Yeah. You make it to your truck?
I did.
Good. So now you're sitting in your hot truck, having to talk on the phone. That's so funny, man, that we're both sitting outside libraries in our vehicles, because I know I don't have cell phone service or internet service at my house. Why are you having to sit outside the library?
So I'm a contractor, and I've got projects all over the area, and I've got a meeting this afternoon up in Boulder. So that was my closest office.
Gotcha. Yeah, I often use the local library as my office as well. So I was going to ask you. That was one of the first questions I was going to ask. Is what you do? You're a contractor.
Yeah, I'm a general contractor. I do commercial and multifamily renovations.
Oh, right on. Well, Charlie, I'll tell you, people are dying to get to know you, man. You just kind of, seemingly came out of nowhere, and are wearing what I would probably consider, one of the most prestigious crowns in at least the hunting athlete world anyway. So let's just jump into it. I want to start with just a little bit about you, like what your background, like where you grew up and some of your athletic backgrounds. I mean, and then, you can pepper in some of your hunting and where that all started and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in a ski resort town, northwest Colorado, Steamboat Springs. I moved there from North Carolina when I was about 10 years old. So I consider that kind of my hometown. Grew up there ski racing and playing a bunch of different sports. And then after high school, I moved down to Fort Collins and went to college at Colorado State University. And since then, I've moved down to Denver, and I've been down in Denver for the past 5 years now. So.
Okay. And in high school, was ski racing your main focus, or did you play any other sports? At Steamboat Springs, by the way, is like, if you've never been to Steamboat Springs, you guys, it's probably one of the prettiest places I've ever been to. It's unreal. It's one of those places that when you go to it, you go, I can't believe people actually live here. Like, they get to see this every single day. Like, you can, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, but you can ski straight up the mountain into town, right?
Well, there is a small resort downtown that you can ski right. You can night ski downtown. The larger resort, the main ski resort, it's a little bit separate from downtown. But that's kind of my point of mentioning that I moved there when I was 10. I was fortunate enough to be 10 years old, and when I moved there, I realized how blessed I was to be able to move there. I didn't grow up there. I wasn't born there, I should say, so I have a little bit more respect for it than some do. A lot of guys growing up when I was younger, I don't think they quite realized what they had because they never lived anywhere else. And I was fortunate enough to move there and have spent some time in another area and knew that my family had blessed me by, moving us there. And now that I don't live there, all I want to do is get back there.
Yeah, right. I don't blame you, man. So you spent probably a lot of time skiing, but was that your main focus, Charlie? Skiing?
I ski raced all the way up and really until high school. Ski racing was a big focus for me when I was younger, but I started playing football in middle school in 7th and 8th grade, and then going into high school, football was really my main focus. I played hockey as well, and I wrestled a little bit, but my main focus athletically was football, and that's kind of what I had planned for myself was football, and then a scholarship, and then on to college, and I was on that path, and then had some stuff that came up that prevented me from pursuing football in college, and through that I found a sport that better fit me, rugby, and I started playing rugby shortly after high school, and that's kind of where my main athletic focus was through college and for a little while after college.
Gotcha. So football, no football. I know you talked about it as though maybe you don't want to talk about it, but is it something you want to talk about? Like, how come you couldn't play football in college?
I'm an open book, so I will talk about it. Unfortunately for me, I had a football coach my senior year of high school that I didn't exactly see eye to eye with, and unfortunately, we butted heads at a practice, and that was the end of my football career. At the time, I think that I thought it was kind of probably the toughest thing I'd ever go through in my life. Looking back on it, it's probably the greatest blessing. It led me to find motivation that I never knew I had, both mentally and physically, to pursue other avenues, and I was kind of determined to walk on after my senior year, and after I had a couple surgeries on my knees and my shoulders my senior year, and after that I was planning to try to walk on, and through that training I met an Australian guy in a gym with a funny accent and talked about rugby, and I knew nothing about the sport. I'd seen clips of it on TV here and there, but knew nothing about it, and he invited me out to one practice, and I was hooked, and I never looked back on football again.
Yeah, man, rugby is just football without the stops and without the pass, right? Like, they say that people who play rugby, people who play football are just people who aren't tough enough to play rugby, right?
Yeah, I won't go that far because I imagine there's some pretty tough football players listening. No, it's a different culture. I consider the community that surrounds rugby is very different than the community that surrounds football. It's truly a team sport, and there's less focus on a particular position, such as quarterback or running back or wide receiver. It's more of a team sport. And there's nothing that I find more fun than being able to participate in an athletic event and just work as hard as you possibly can and smash each other, and then afterwards, shake hands, hug each other, and grab a beer.
Yeah. That's what rugby is too, man. It's crazy. Like, the rugby guys, I've been to one major rugby tournament in my mind. I've never seen so many naked men, period. And I've never seen so much beer at all hours of the day being drank by such, like, crazy athletes. You know what I mean? Like, it's just funny. You talk about the culture of rugby. It's like the two things that come to mind is drinking and naked people running around.
That's a great first impression. I mean, I can't lie and say that's I'm not gonna lie and say that's not a part of it. But it's I don't know. I wasn't a fraternity guy in college, but it's still the same aspect. It's a group of people that they all know what it takes to do something, and they have respect for each other who participate in that sport. And the community around that sport has taken me places in my life that I never thought I'd be able to accomplish. I mean, you meet people through rugby, and next thing you know, you can go anywhere in the world you want, and you find a local bar with a rugby team, and you have a couch to sleep on that night, and probably within 2 to 3 days, you'd have a place to make a couple bucks as a side job and get by. Everybody just takes care of everybody.
Yeah, it is quite the community, man. It's unreal. It's one of the few, I think, sports where if you can go to the biggest tournaments in the world, and even if you don't have a team, you can just show up with your boots. They call them your boots, right?
Yep.
Show up with your boots, and most likely, if you'll get a chance to play with somebody. It's just like it's a very welcoming, inclusive community that I appreciate, and although I've never played rugby, I think that it's one of those sports that I see a lot of similarities between, say like that kind of a community and the community that we go through. Those guys just beat the heck out of each other, just like it's the challenges you go through hell together, and afterwards you're all friends. And yeah, you're competing together, but in the end, you're all kind of there just to do the best you can and let the chips fall where they may. So it's cool to watch. On that note, Charlie, I want to find out. I got some big questions. One is, when did you start shooting a bow?
Started shooting a bow. I was thinking about this the other day. I am a relatively new hunter. I grew up doing a little bit of small game hunting. Hunting wasn't a huge thing in my family. My dad was more of a ski bum than he was, hunter.
Yeah.
We did some, we went, grouse hunting and dove hunting and did some small game, but never went elk or deer hunting until actually after college. I never had the opportunity to, because every season that hunting was rolling around, I was focusing on football. And if I wasn't focused on football, I was focusing on rugby. So I never really had the opportunity to get into it. And then I want to say 2012 or probably 2012. I have a buddy that I met after college that always talked about hunting and stuff, and had the opportunity to go with him, and I drew a buck tag, and we went on a third season rifle hunt outside of Steamboat, and was fortunate enough to harvest a buck. But the entire time we were rifle hunting, he was telling me about bow hunting, and he wouldn't shut up about how much better it is. And and nothing against rifle hunting, but he just talked about the weather. I mean, it was cold. We were freezing cold.
Yeah.
Guys had already been in the woods for months. The animals were pushed all over the place, and all he could talk about is screaming, bugling elk in September in Colorado, and the aspect of being, within shooting distance with a bow. So I actually, after I harvested that deer, shortly thereafter, I went to the local pawn shop and bought a bow from the pawn shop, not knowing anything about archery at all, and found out when the fewest people possible were at the archery range, and that's where I would go.
Yeah.
Because I was so out of place, I didn't know what to do. A few YouTube videos and a bow that I bought at a pawn shop got me into the sport.
So how long ago was this?
That would have been 2013, so about 5 years ago.
So so you've been shooting a bow for just 5 years. That's pretty impressive, man. The way you shot, because you had some pretty stiff competition at nationals this year. I mean, just all around, just even in your qualifier there at Colorado, there was some really stiff competition, and shooting makes a big difference. I mean, as you can probably attest to, shooting makes a huge difference. And most of those guys and girls have been shooting for years and years. And for you to pick up a bow just 5 years ago and be able to come out and win it because of your shooting is impressive, brother. Which leads me to this next question. How did you prepare? Like, you decided, hey, I'm going to do this qualifier. What the heck? Now, first of all, let's step back. How did you hear about Train to Hunt? And what made you decide, you know what, I'm going to go out and give this a shot?
I was trying to figure that out. I think I came across Train to Hunt on social media, to be honest with you. I think I saw it pop up on Facebook about 2 years ago. And at the time, I was still pretty green into archery, and I had fallen in love with archery and I've been shooting like crazy. But I saw it and I was like, man, that would be great, because I'm not playing rugby anymore and I don't have any sports, and I'd love to have something to do, because after I bought that bow and learned to hunt, I started archery hunting every year, and I'm hooked on it. I'm absolutely in love with archery hunting elk in September, and it's a huge focus for me. But what I found was I would be in really, really good shape at the beginning of summer. And then I would have one too many days on the lake and one too many barbecues with friends where my fitness would dwindle throughout the summer, and I didn't have anything that I really set goals for. So this year, I decided, you know what, I'm going to look into this and see what it's all about. And I'll never forget YouTube and the videos of the 2018 Train to Hunt Challenge requirements, and watching you in what looked to be a hayfield or a cornfield somewhere, going through the exercises, and I'm like, all right, you know, I think I can do that. You know, and I'm shooting year round, and you know what, I'll give it a try and see how it goes. And I kind of just signed up for the regionals just to see how I would do and see kind of where I stand, and it would give me something. I do really good when I set goals for myself. I can accomplish almost any goal I set for myself. But if I don't set a goal for myself, I think as humans we sometimes become complacent, and I wanted to avoid that this year. So there was a couple things that I signed up for throughout the summer, which have kept me physically and mentally in shape and preparation for this archery season.
And so what do you do to prepare for the qualifier?
You know, I through rugby, I had a coach that had a training philosophy that he called manic training, and he would train me as a rugby athlete, and then he actually opened up a gym in the Steamboat area, and then saw the growth and saw what his capabilities were, and he had opened a couple other gyms, one of which being in Denver where I live, and it's called manic training. And a lot of the day-to-day exercises that we're doing at our gym are very similar to what we're doing in the Train to Hunt Challenge, with the exception of the shooting. We do a lot of sandbag exercises, a lot of kettlebell, a lot of box steps. It's kind of one of those gyms. There's no mirrors. There's no selfies. There's no. We don't do straight bar exercises. If we do hang cleans, we're hang cleaning with a kettlebell. If we do a squat, we're doing a squat with a sandbag. If we're benching, it's with a one-arm dumbbell. And so I've continued to do that for the past. I've started doing that 10 years ago, and I still continue to do that same type of training. But I knew that the shooting aspect of it was really where I needed to focus my priority, and not only that, the shooting with an elevated heart rate. So I would find myself at a local archery range, with a weighted backpack, running sprints up and down and doing burpees and shooting targets, trying to get prepared for it. And to be completely honest, when I showed up in Powderhorn, I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. And looking back on it, it was probably one of the greatest decisions I've made. Just going through that experience has completely changed my perspective of my physical fitness, my shooting capabilities, and what I can and can't do in the woods.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of it, right? Is just to give people a peek behind the curtain. Like, there's just nothing out there that is going to be to compare as far as proving grounds for your mountain fitness or your backpack fitness or your hunting fitness, we'll call it. For us out in the West, it's basically our hunting fitness, because most guys out here, you have to move through the mountains and have to be in some kind of shape in order to really excel at the physical side of hunting. So that's great. How did you prepare different after the qualifier, Charlie, than you for nationals? Like, okay, I got the qualifier in my belt. Now I kind of see what I got myself into. Was there something that you changed up between the qualifier and the nationals, or did you just kind of stick to the same like workout regimen?
To be honest with you, I learned so much at the qualifier by watching the people that were around me. I was fortunate enough to have Jason in my heat with me, who Jason took first in Wyoming last year and 6th or 7th in nationals. Yeah. And Jason Arthur. When I found out that Jason Arthur was Jason Arthur, I didn't know. I'm not a stats guy, and I don't really know too many of the guys in the industry. But when I met him before regionals and he introduced himself and told me about some of his accomplishments, I kind of put in the back of my head like, okay, just, you know, keep up with this guy and you're going to be all right. And that's really how I got through regionals was, you know, working, you know, just following his lead. But watching, I had never done a 3D shoot before in my life, and going to that was probably the most intimidating part for me was the 3D shoot, not the physical aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea what to do. I didn't take my binos. I was so unprepared for it, and I would just watch every other guy around me and how they handled the course and how they walked through. So in preparation for nationals, I still had the physical aspect of it that I was pushing on a daily basis, but the shooting aspect of it was a huge, huge push for me too. Was, you know, understanding a 3D shoot and really executing some of those shots. I mean, in regionals, I missed 2 shots at less than 10 yards. I had never shot my bow 10 yards before, so I remember turning in my scorecard to you and leaving the event because I had to get back into town to spend some time with my wife and family, and you told me to stick around, and I didn't think I shot very well at all. And it wasn't until a couple days later that I found out that I shot a little bit better than I anticipated, and ended up getting second, but I still knew there was a ton of room for improvement, so that was really my main focus.
Yeah, just shooting, and yeah, I remember you coming in and kind of in disgust, handing me your scorecard and being like, maybe I got third, but like I gotta go because like I didn't shoot worth a damn. I was just like, well, we'll see, Charlie. Like you were pretty fit, and if you shot well at all, you got a pretty good chance. And I remember putting that in the back of my mind when you walked out the door and going through the scores and seeing that how you shot and thinking, man, if this guy feels like he shot really bad, and I think you shot like in the like low 70s or something like that.
Shot a 75.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, if this is bad to that point, yeah, man, I got to get him at nationals because he's definitely got the fitness behind him, and if he knows he's capable of, you know, 10 or 15 more points on top of this 3D score, he's going to be a contender. So. Yeah, I remember that just that look of like, oh man, I completely blew it in the shooting, and that when you left, you were going to be shooting a lot more if you were going to plan on coming to nationals. So you did that, man. You did that. You ended up shooting more. You trained hard, and you won. And you beat a really, really good field. Some of you know that he basically on Crown the King, there was a guy, Trevor Niestraff, who was a national champ, and nobody even really comes really close to knocking him out until this year. Charlie comes in as a first timer and beats him, and everybody was just like, who is this guy and what's he doing? And so that's what I think this interview is about, is just people wanting to get to know the new champ. And on that note, Charlie, what is there a training tip that you would give people? Like, is there something that you really like think this is kind of the secret that you have in your training and your mindset that people might be able to take away from this podcast that that you do, that you really give a lot of credit to your success?
I don't think that there's one in particular. I mean, my biggest thing is being an athlete my whole life. I went through different phases of fitness that I focused on. And when I was young in middle school and early years of high school, I was a very overweight individual. I was the fat kid. And really? I remember that if I ever wanted to go anywhere with football, I wasn't going to do it as a lineman. And between my sophomore year and my junior year of high school, I made a lot of social sacrifices and a lot of lifestyle changes, which allowed me to drop about 35 pounds going into my junior year. And I really became focused on fitness and nutrition. And then after that, I did the typical college athlete thing was you got to be the biggest, baddest, rippedest guy out there. Like curls are awesome and bench press is really cool. And over the years, I've learned that that's great, but curls don't do too much for me when I'm hunting. You know, there's
curls. I mean, curls for the girls, baby. Curls for the girls.
They have their spots in some people's life, but in mine, they're not really there. So I've kind of shifted my focus from really building mass and trying to be this really big guy to just being healthy and healthy for life. That's kind of the big thing for me is just I want to be able to, if you came up to me and said, Charlie, see that mountain over there? I bet you can't run to the top of it. I would say, I bet you're wrong, and I would go and do it. Yeah. And that's what I want to do. So the training that I do is I don't spend a lot of times, you know, 1 rep max on my deadlift, my squats, my bench. I don't even know how much I could squat or lift. Like I said, I can't remember the last time I did a squat with a straight bar, or a bench press with a straight bar, or last time I did a curl with a dumbbell or a straight bar. It's more functional stuff. I've found that at this point in my life, I'm probably the fittest I've ever been. And I would have thought that probably would have been when I was playing rugby. It should have been. Because of the training I was doing then, but I've exceeded that. I may not weigh as much as I used to and have the same muscle mass, but overall fitness, I'm there now. And after seeing kind of what my body's capable of, I have a lot more desire to push it a lot harder and really see kind of where things go next year.
Yeah, absolutely, which is a great segue into my next question. Number one, there's kind of 2 parts. One, what would you do different next year before nationals? And 2, would you give us just kind of a walkthrough on what your weekly training load looks like?
Yeah. So what would I do differently next year? On the shooting aspect, I would do a lot more 3D shooting. That's something that I never done. There's a ton of 3D leagues around me. I'd never really gone out and shot a 3D course, and I think just doing that once would have really changed my performance. And then the shooting with an elevated heart rate is huge. Understanding what you're capable of doing when your body is fatigued versus going to the range, with a gallon of water and shooting a target at 60 or 80 yards, and then going in the backcountry and thinking you can do the same thing. You can't. It's not even close. Right. So shooting wise, I would do that. Training wise, what I would change, I intend to do more of the same exercises that we saw at the competition. Just having an understanding for how your body handles box-facing burpees. Done a lot of burpees in my life. Never jumped over a box before to do another one. So it was a changer.
It is.
And then the big thing for me is if I'm required to do 20 box-facing burpees, I want to be training doing 30 to 40 box-facing burpees. If I'm going to step onto a 20-inch box, I want to step onto a 22-inch box when I'm training. I want to know that I'm capable of doing it going into the competition.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to just view training just in general is that it's at the kind of the peak of your training. You want to be not overtraining, but overloading yourself so that the competition is easy, right? So if you're doing training, you're doing 30, 40, 35, 40 box facing burpees without really slowing down up on a 22-inch box. When you're asked to do, 20 box facing burpees on a 20-inch box, you're going to feel like I'm going to be able to fly through these things. And then physically, you're going to be there. You just adapted to a 22-inch box and 35 rep count. As long as, you can hold your speed, what the heck? I used to train like that for everything. Like if I was going to be wrestling, when I was in wrestling, instead of training for, 3 2-minute rounds, I'd either train for like 3 4-minute rounds or 3 5-minute rounds or 4 2-minute rounds, and always train overtime just so that everything's just, you want the competition to feel easy. And mentally, you want to be able to wrap your mind around the idea that there's no, like, I can do this because I've been doing so much more. So that's a great tip.
Absolutely. And I guess for anybody that's listening that is sitting there going, I don't have sandbags, I don't have boxes, I don't have the ability to train this way, my biggest piece of advice is to come to one of the events and just do it. I don't care if you've ever moved a sandbag before in your life. If you come out and do it once, it is, it's an eye-opening experience. It's humbling. It's hard, I guess. To be honest with you, I was a little bit frustrated that a lot of the guys that I know in the hunting community in the Colorado area weren't at the event. And I think you said it best when we had our meeting the morning of the competition was, you got to be willing to put your ego aside and stand up man to man with the guy next to you and really see what you're capable of. It forever changed me by doing so. I learned so much about not only myself, mentally and physically, but also my hunting capabilities. I harvested a bull 2 years ago that, looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have taken that shot had I done a train to hunt event. I was fortunate enough to make the kill and harvest the animal, but it was a 50-yard shot uphill after a very long hike chasing an elk, with the elk quartering away from me. And looking back on it, with how much I was shaking and the shot, I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have taken that shot today, because I know what my limitations are now, and I think it's going to make me a much more successful hunter moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is one of the big things that it shows you is your limitations, right? Like your shooting limitations. Like, look, I know that if I do X, Y, and Z, I have to, I get to a certain point, I have to wait a certain amount of time before I can make a good ethical shot every time. Now, it sounds to me like you ended up with, lucking out. Is that a good way to put it, Charlie? Kind of lucking out and being able to get that animal and harvest him and take the meat home and reap the benefits. But I think that doing a train to hunt challenge and training like a hunter, even if you didn't do a challenge, but if you did train like a train to hunt challenge competitor, you would understand your limitations physically, your shooting capabilities, and everything else. It's going to save you a lot of heartache. A lot of heartache.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's great, man. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask, was what you would tell people that. What if somebody's out there? They're not really ego. They're more afraid. They're more like just timid and thinking, man, I don't know if I can do this. Do you have any advice for people like that? Because they look at you and they're like, man, of course this guy is going to say come out and do it. He's the national champion. Like, he's the best. He's the most fit bow hunter in the country. Like, of course he's going to say come out and do it. What would you say to people that they're just like, man, I'm just getting off the couch. I'm just brushing the Cheetos off the front of my shirt. But I just don't know if I'm ready for a train to hunt qualifier. What would you say to that?
I can't wait to see you at your first competition. I would tell them to be there. I would tell them that I found you touched on it earlier. It's like we hit on with the rugby community. There's a community around this event in particular that I haven't really seen with some other hunting communities, and the support that you have amongst athletes, spectators, volunteers to be successful is absolutely incredible. There's a lot of guys there that, for me, I mean, I was lined up against guys that people were name dropping left and right. I didn't really know who they were. I just was blown away with how humble and supportive they were, and how much they wanted to see me succeed. And I would say, if you're timid or you don't feel like you've got the physical fitness to do it, you do. You just have to be willing to push yourself, and you're going to have people there that are willing to push you as well. It's you had touched on it in a podcast in the past about how I think the average human uses 30% of their physical ability.
Yeah. 30%.
30%. So with that in mind, I would say that anybody listening to this that expects to go out and harvest an animal come fall is capable of doing it, because if they're going to go out and walk around in the woods, they've got to have some sort of physical capability, and if that's their 30%, I guarantee with a little bit of mental push, they can get through a train to hunt, and it's pretty inspiring to go through just one round with the other competitors there. Everybody is beyond supportive, and when the event's over and it's all said and done, there's people that podium and there's people that finish dead last, but I don't think there's much conversation about who's who or who did the worst or who did the best. That was probably the highlight of nationals for me, was getting to shoot the second day in the 3D tournament with Trevor, the 3-time national champion, and Jason, and getting halfway through that event and not knowing who's in first, who's in second, who's in last, because we didn't care about it. All we cared about was having fun together and shooting. And it wasn't until after the 3D competition was over that Trevor looked at me and said, "Congratulations," that it dawned on me that I had accomplished what I did, because we were so supportive of each other and we were just out there having fun that it didn't matter how you finished at that point. We were just like-minded people having a good time on a Sunday.
Yeah, then that's a good point, man. Did it catch you off guard, Charlie? Did the fact that holy crud, man, I won. Like, I actually won this sucker. Did it catch you off guard?
Very much so. When there was I was in the second heat. There was a heat ahead of me of pure studs.
Yep.
And those guys, part of me was like, man, I wish I was in that heat. Part of me was like, man, those guys are gonna have fun against each other. Right. But I didn't. I had a guy in my heat. I can't remember Mitch's last name. The kid was just.
Was it Mitch Sandberg?
I believe so.
Big kid, big blonde kid. Yep.
Yeah, young guy.
Yep.
He's like a pit bull, just fit as can be. And man, he was just neck and neck with me the whole time through the fitness challenge. And it came to the meat pack, and I was able to start to distance myself a little bit. And I really didn't know how I was doing or where I stood on the meat pack, because it's a pretty long meat pack, and you can be on your own out there. You got 3.2 miles and 1,500 feet of vertical to climb. Yep. You can find yourself walking alone for a while, and that's what I did. And when I got up to towards the top, to the finish line, and I remember Jesse yelling at me going, "What's your number? What's your number?" And I'm going 13, and he's going, "It's not on here. It's not on here." And I'm trying to tell him it's in the second heat.
Yeah.
It kind of dawned on me there. I'm like, okay, I'm doing pretty good. Like, if he's not expecting me to be at the finish line yet, and I'm already here, I could be onto something.
Yeah, exactly.
And then going into the shooting the next day, I knew that that's where I had really struggled at regionals. And, you know, I said that, you know, I made it to nationals and I just want to go out and have fun. And I'm shooting with, you know, the best guys out there. And, let's see how the day goes. And to be honest with you, I'd really forgotten about what the score was. I didn't care. I didn't really care that I was shooting better or worse than anybody else in my group. All I was concerned about was shooting better than I did at regionals, which I did. I looked at my scorecard versus my scorecard. And yeah, when we got done and Trevor told me that I had won, I was like, no, we don't know that yet. We got to tally everything up. He's like, no, you did. And it was a pretty humbling experience to have him say that. And we kind of just hung out up on the mountain for a little bit and kind of just take our time getting down off the hill. And it took a little while to sink in. I don't think it really sunk in for a couple days.
I bet, man. I bet. I wanted to go back to the meat pack because I heard somebody say that you had a different method of basically relieving the pack weight off your shoulders than anybody else. There was a lot of people with walking sticks. There were some people without walking sticks, and somebody said, "Yeah, Charlie didn't have walking sticks. He had a different technique." Can you explain to us what you were doing to get that weight off your shoulders?
Yeah, so I didn't know if we were doing a meat pack at nationals or not. You're really good with your surprises.
Yeah.
So I had no idea. I just knew that at regionals I'd done a 50-pound pack, but I knew that you told me it was going to be bigger, heavier, harder, stronger. And I'm thinking all I know is there's going to be more weight. So during the time of regionals and nationals, I was doing meat pack with a 105-pound sandbag, and because if I can do 105, I know I can do 100. And my breakdown point in my training wasn't my legs, it was my shoulders. I was having pains, and I had a particular backpack that didn't fit my body very well, and that, but unfortunately that was the pack that I had, and I wasn't in a position to go buy a new one before nationals, so I knew that I was going to use this pack, and if I use it, I got to make it comfortable, because I don't know if I'm going to have to meat pack, but if I do, I need it to be comfortable for me. So what I did was I took rope and I tied it to my shoulder straps, right on top of the shoulder, and I basically took parachute cord that was about 1.5 feet long and tied little loops in the end. And I had never used trekking poles in my life. I looked at getting some before nationals, but again, I wasn't in a position to go spend much money on the stuff to do meat packs. So I kind of I've got parachute cord in the garage. I've got this backpack that doesn't really fit well and it's pretty uncomfortable, but I know I can pack weight in it. And I tied the parachute cord on there, and what it allowed me to do was basically do a shoulder press with the backpack. And as I was hiking up the hill, my legs weren't bothering me, but my lower back was starting to bleed, and my left shoulder was starting to bleed because my backpack was rubbing me so raw. And what I would do is I would do a shoulder press with these 2 ropes that I tied on there, which took the weight off my back.
Yeah.
And it was equivalent of doing, a 100-pound shoulder press, which is a 50-pound dumbbell is the way I looked at it. And I said, you know what, I can do that quite a few times in the amount of time it's going to take me to get to the top of this hill. So yeah, that was kind of my method.
That's unreal, man. You know what? That's called making it work. And I love it. That's the kind of attitude a guy has to have, because you know what? Mother Nature doesn't care what kind of gear you have, and we're not all made of money. But it's not going to stop you, right? You adjust and move forward. That's it, and I love it. I mean, and it's I just heard about that technique that you were using, and I was like, that's the first thing everybody does when they stop. Is it's usually when your pack's really heavy, you're going to have one of two things. You're going to either have some hip pain or you're going to have some shoulder pain, or some lower back pain. Hopefully, you're not having lower back pain. But the first thing everybody does is like bend over, hike that pack, and get it off your shoulders. And then when I think it was my brother Ryan was like, yeah, Charlie he just had these rope, and he just locked his arms out overhead and walked that way for a little bit and then let him down. And I was like, man, that's smart, man. I haven't tried it, but I'm going to. I'm going to.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, my pack, come September, is going to have 2 straps on there.
Yeah, you like it. I like it.
I really hope to use them.
Yeah. I hope so too. Speaking of which, what kind of hunts do you have planned for the fall?
So I've got a elk archery tag here in Colorado. So like I said, like we talked about earlier, I'm pretty new to hunting. I would consider myself pretty green. I've never hunted outside of Colorado. All my hunts have been in Colorado.
Not a bad state.
No, I've been I've been fortunate enough to harvest two bulls, 2 bucks, and a cow, and hopefully keep that going. So I don't, I'm not into, I don't really care to hunt much more than just elk
and deer.
That's good for me. It tastes good. You
yeah.
get a lot of meat from it. So I've got the elk hunt here in Colorado archery, and then I have a late season mule deer tag. It's a rifle tag, but I'm gonna bring the bow out and see if I can't seal the deal. It's a November mule deer tag, so it should be fun because they'll be in the rut, and should be able to seal the deal. Hopefully they're a little bit more preoccupied with the women and not so much with me.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's on my bucket list, is that high country mule deer hunt. I've done one way back when, probably 10 years ago in Nevada, but and by the way, that's the only tag I've ever even put in for. As far as draws go, how you hear a lot of guys will say, "Oh, did you draw anything?" And I'm the guy that always has the same blatant response, like, you got to put in for something to draw them, because I'm kind of with you, Charlie. Like I haven't killed enough elk and deer in my time to feel like I need to go out of state too much. I have Idaho right here in my backyard, and being a Colorado resident, I mean, shoot, how many people buy out of state tags for Colorado, and it's right there in your hometown. So I'm with you, man. There's very, very few things, maybe nothing on this planet that I would rather hunt than bugling bulls. So I stick to that pretty much, and then other than that, I spend a lot of time just trying to be the best husband and father I can be. So I'm
right there with you.
I can appreciate it, man. I can appreciate it. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you taking time out. I know that I'm looking forward to this podcast being out and just getting to know you better. I hope to see you again next year and stay in touch. Let us know how your fall pursuits go. And again, thanks a ton for being on the podcast and just being part of the Train to Hunt family. Appreciate it.
No, absolutely, man. And I can't thank you enough for what you've created with the culture and the community with the Train to Hunt. Again, like I said, for anybody that's never done it or has been on the fence about it, I highly recommend it. It really has changed me and shown me what I'm capable of and what I'm not capable of and what my strengths and weaknesses are. And not to mention just some of the most amazing people at the events. I mean, I look forward to participating next year, but I also look forward to catching up with everybody that I met at regionals and nationals, because it's some of the coolest people, and they're just so humble and so nice. And it's funny, as a kind of a new guy in the hunting industry, I was having a lot of conversations with a lot of people that I probably should have known their name and who they were, and never would have thought twice about who it was or who I was talking to. it's an amazing community, amazing event, and forever grateful, and really, really look forward to competing next year. And again, I hope to make it to an event outside of Colorado and get to know some athletes in other states.
Right on, Charlie. Well, again, man, you're a welcome addition, and for those of you out there, take his words to heart. Like it's a very welcoming, inclusive community of people that are happy to include you in whatever's going on, and it's all ages, all sizes, all fitness levels, all everything. We all have one thing in common. We are, everybody's humble. Everybody loves health and fitness and hunting and the outdoors, and so come out and join us. On that note, I hope you enjoyed the podcast and have a healthy week. Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks,
All right,
have a good one.
All right, you too. Thanks again.
Yeah.